ultimately, I think Dalvin's a very, very talented back, right? Like, so I don't think any of us can dispute the fact that he should be more involved in the offense as long as it makes sense with game script and everything else. My hot take that nobody's stated so far yet, only because nobody really asked, but I'm going to provide it
Let's
anyway.
hear it. Let's
Is
hear it.
I do think this is Dalvin's last year in purple. I think this will be his last year in Minnesota. We'll see what happens. Obviously, if all of a sudden we win the Super Bowl and this, that, or whatever happens, right? Like anything can happen. But my bold prediction is that this will be his last year with the Vikings. I just think that looking at the Rams offense and how the league kind of runs offenses at this point, devaluing that running back spot, I think that the crazy aspect to that statement that I just made, though, is I also think it's possible, and I think it's almost even more likely that this is Madison's last year in purple, because I think that he would like to be a feature back somewhere, and I think he's earned that. I hope he gets that. As a Vikings fan, I certainly would not cheer for him against the Vikings, but when he's not playing the Vikings, I would love to see him succeed somewhere else. But I think as far as this year is concerned, yes, I want to see him more involved. I want to see us spread him out like everyone in here has already stated. But my bold prediction to tack on to everyone else's statement is that savor it while you can. I think he will get shopped at the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be interesting to see the Vikings take a new approach with running backs, like not paying running backs big money, I think is something that we're going to see the Vikings do. And if you think about it, with Justin Jefferson going to be making how much money he's going to be making, Kirk still making as much money as he's making, defensive players, like you want to keep Za'Darius maybe in the future, or at least Daniil. You're going to have to cut costs somewhere. And I am a firm believer that running back is the most disposable position in the NFL. I do not think it's a very important position. Not that you shouldn't have an athlete out there or whatever, but there are so many running backs that are good, or at least good enough if you have a good offensive line, that you don't need to you don't need to spend $10 million a year on a running back or more, like the Cowboys are doing with Ezekiel Elliott. That's just crazy. Like, you don't need to spend that kind of money. They're running backs that grow on trees in the draft. I mean, we're seeing 6th and 7th rounders, UDFAs, for crying out loud, are making names for themselves in this league. Like, you can't tell me that you need to have a top tier running back to be successful. And here's another thing I'll mention before I get off my soapbox here. If you go back and you look at all the Super Bowls from the last 20 years, how many times was there a top tier running back on the roster of the winning football team? Think about it. There was not many. Marshawn Lynch is probably the last one you can really think of. Okay, that's a top 5 type running back that was on that roster. If you go back, look at all the Tom Brady teams. Did they have a number 1 type running back on their roster? No. There's a bunch of James Whites and all these other guys. It's like the running back position does not matter if you have if it's just somebody that you can find in the draft for cheap. And we saw it with the Patriots. We've seen it with other teams around the league. Even the Dolphins, to an extent, they're kind of doing that a little bit. I think I can't remember what they paid Chase Edmonds. They might have paid him too much. But yeah, the 49ers, they've kind of lived by that philosophy. So I'm kind of wondering if Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell kind of go with that same type of philosophy going forward.
I think it's kind of like skewed a little bit. I think it's more like the type of running back that you have, because a lot of these running backs that come out of college, they're one dimensional. Like some guys can just run, some guys can run to the outside, some guys can only run screen plays, some guys are pass catching running backs. When you have a running back of Dalvin Cook's caliber that can basically do it all, you kind of want to keep that guy, in house. I just hate the fact that people will say like, oh, the running back, situation is not that good. Well, college isn't really putting them out as being complete running backs anymore. Like if you look at Adrian Peterson was probably the best running back Viking of all time in everybody else's opinion, but not mine. I feel Robert Smith was better because Robert Smith could block. He could catch. he could do everything else, stuff like that. So I don't think the running back situation should be devalued. I just think there's different types of running back. Look at Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is able to take over a game if he wants to.
Yep.
If it's deemed to. Those type of backs are like, you can't find them anymore. That's why some of these teams get these back by committees. And you think about it, when they have like back by committee, they rotate these guys, out a lot. Look at Sonny Michel. He's been with the Patriots, he's been with the Rams. Now he's a Charger. They just keep rolling these guys out because these guys are not complete running backs. There's a difference between a complete running back to a guy that's just athletic back there. Like when you look at Cook can do it all. Cook can catch, he can block, he can run, he can take over a game. He has that speed burst, but his only downfall is his availability. He's always hurt. I think the guy who's probably going to be going this year is probably going to be Danielle Hunter, in my opinion.
Ooh,
that's just what I'm thinking is going to be Danielle Hunter. Yeah, and I think because I'm not saying he's doing bad this year, but I'm just saying like you need to be more athletic on the outside, and it's easier to restructure Dalvin Cook and keep him for another year when you got to pay Danielle Hunter this crazy amount of money when you could just go and get somebody like Randy Gregory in the draft to be athletic on the outside. I don't think they're going to pay that much, for Danielle Hunter, considering Justin Jefferson needs to get paid. It's going to be the defense that guys are going to be leaving. Harrison Smith might be a guy that might not be here next year. I think all the weapons that's on offense, they're going to try to keep them in-house. And with the Vikings, they've never been really a team to just devalue guys until their value pretty much goes away. They always restructure guys and make sure these hometown discounts stay. They don't really just get rid of guys.
I don't disagree with you. I think the big thing with the running back situation is it's just the league is moving, and by league I mean teams, right? Teams are moving to what the league is doing, as it pertains to how they ref games, how generally offenses are being run. I mean, if you look at kind of where we're getting soft from a again game call standpoint, we've seen them really emphasize illegal contact past that 5-yard buffer, right?
An eligible receiver too.
Is really trying to perpetuate, the passing game and trying to move to a more pass happy league in general. So I think what teams look at when they're looking at their backfield is return on investment, right? So how much money are we paying our running backs to how much production we're receiving, and then what that looks like throughout the league, right? So is there a comparable team that's spending less than we are that it's getting the same production? And if that answer is yes, then that means we are in a negative return on investment. And it's not to take away from Dalvin. I think Dalvin's extremely talented. I'd love to have him forever. But, especially with Kwesi being a finance guy, I can definitely see him taking an approach of how much are we getting for our money, right? For every dollar we spend, how many yards are we getting? Right. And so I think that approach, we're probably going to see a bit more of a Belichickian way of running a roster, where if we can get someone cheaper that can get us close, right? But we're saving an immense amount of money. Let's say we have 10% drop off in production, but we have 70% savings, right? The answer is obvious. So, but as far as your Danielle take, I think that's a good one. I don't think we've seen enough from him this year to say he's worth another big extension or anything like that. And I love Danielle. This has come from somebody who, hey, I hope he gets 6 sacks next week. But it just is what it is so far through 4 weeks.
I think both you guys, or all three of you, are right when it comes to Dalvin Cook. I think the league wants players like him. So they want the dual threat back. They want a guy who can run. They want a guy who can pass catch. I mean, that's what everyone wants. But then to Carson's point, is he worth the money when it comes to that? Or can you supplement that with a guy out of the draft or potentially a free agent? Because there's going to be other teams that are maybe looking to move a guy that might have similar talents to that. So do we want to move on from him? I do think it's going to be the last year for Dalvin Cook in purple.